Alright everybody, welcome back to a brand new video. Today we're reacting and having a discussion about a video from the theMrHeadache titled "Why Did DVD Get Harder Suddenly? Semi Rant, Dead by Daylight." So I've been talking about this topic quite a bit recently, that there has been a shift in the difficulty to play killer lately.
Now
So it's a universal thing that's been happening. And you know what's funny is that I've actually been dealing with the same sort of feeling about the game for even longer, I think, than where people actually started talking about it. And I've said this many times, I've talked about it very frequently. I've said this many times. And I've honestly taken a very, very good distance away from the game entirely because of the fact that it has gotten to a point where it's really not enjoyable to play. With that being said, it's crazy to hear that more people besides myself have been experiencing a very, bad time playing DBD, which is that really a surprise? Probably not.
there are even creators that I've never seen do variety suddenly start hopping on variety since the Springtrap release, which is kind of weird considering that we're at our highest player count of like what, 100,016 or 116,000. That's how you would say that. 116,000 is our like new highest player count, right? Theoretically, that would imply that things feel good right now. But I would argue that the game feels terrible right now. So let's go ahead and talk about why. So
The game does feel terrible right now. I'm glad that somebody's saying it. It's felt terrible for much earlier than this, and I've already taken distance away from the game, and I've already been playing other games in my own free time, and I've just been mainly focusing on creating conversational topic focused videos and things like that, and that's what we've been doing as of late because of it, right? I did occasionally drop a gameplay video here and there, but still, I mean, why? Like, why even play at this point, right?
So I feel like basically every single match that I play, if I could summarize it, is just like we have two gens off the cuff happen like almost immediately. Usually it's one gen. Sometimes a good team will get two gens. Like
For a long time, I've been saying that the gens are incredibly fast, and once again, we have another person that is once again mentioning this. You're getting two off the bat, and even if you, for those of you who tuned into the streams, you guys can also agree with that as well. You guys have seen me load into matches and get a very quick chase. It could be literally like 10 seconds at most, and you'll still hear two gens just fly
out the gate right away, which essentially forces you to play the rest of the match under a crunch because you start the game with two gens already done or a gen and a half already done, which is very, very hard. It's a very hard ask to play a game from 3 or 4 gens. So obviously that's very difficult. And that stress that stress and pressure really starts becoming overwhelming very quickly. Even if you're playing more chill or more casual, your games are going by so quick, you're not even really getting to do the fun or casual things. I know.
And theMrHeadache has once again made an extremely valid point, and I made this point in other videos as well. Regardless of how you're playing the game, regardless of your playstyle, regardless of your MMR, regardless of your main, regardless of anything, the gens and everybody's experience, from what I've seen and what I've heard and what I've experienced, has been in just insane gen speeds. I've been saying this since day one. Gen rushing is the biggest problem with this game. It's the biggest issue, and it's causing a bunch of issues across the board for killer.
I felt this personally because I've been trying to get better and learn Springtrap, but it feels like my games are going by so fast, I'm not really getting the chance to kind of, experiment and finagle with the power.
That's what I was experiencing as well when I tried playing Springtrap. I think I had played maybe a few matches, and then that was enough for me. Honestly, is not really worth dealing with the stress after that. And I made this point even during the Blood Moon event as well. I said that there really isn't an incentive to even try to play matches if they're only 5 minutes long. And I'm just saying this across the board. Like, I don't think anybody would want to walk into a DVD match and just have a 5-minute game, and then they would just end up having to wait 10 minutes for queue time, and then you have another 5-minute game, and then you have to wait another 10 minutes, and then you're spending more time waiting than you're actually playing. And that's not a good ratio. At that point, I just, you know, at least from my experience, because I had to deal with that, I just closed the game. I wasn't gonna keep waiting around to load into matches, and then they just end in literally 5 minutes. It's not worth it.
To actually get good at it. And this has been the sentiment that's been expressed by most people I've asked about their current games and their current climate about the game. Yeah, 1 or 2 gens right out the gate usually get done, and then I'm just stressing for the rest of the match. It feels like I have to play super mean, like hard camp, hard tunnel, do what I gotta do in order to make ends meet every like BM strategy that you can do on Killer, quote unquote, right?
And once again, Mr. Headache brings up another point that I've also stated many times, that because you're starting off with that type of pressure, you end up using the strategies, which then the survivors cry and bitch and complain about again. But then they cause the issue by rushing the gens further, so then more people want to bring slowdown and utilize strategies in order to actually just have a casual match. Because if the gens aren't flying, you can actually just kind of like play around a bit more than where if you were to run a meme build where the gens fly in 5 minutes and then you have no time to do anything else. So that's the main thing that I was talking about many times. I've been saying that this has been the biggest problem, and it's caused by the objective being as fast as it is. If they were to bring it down, and if they were to make it so that you're not losing a gen every 2 seconds, you might be able to actually have matches that are a bit more, as you consider, fair, quote in quotations, to actually have a more fun match, because they hate the strategies, they hate the slowdown, but then because the objective is so fast, there is no other choice as a killer player. Either you get steamrolled all game, every game, 5-minute games, and then you don't even have a chance to play, so you just don't even load up the game after that. You just close it and move on. So a bunch of those people lose their opportunity, right? And then that will apply to across the board, right? Doesn't matter what MMR you're at.
And if I don't, the match is a runaway train because they just have so much early pressure that they snowball for the rest of the game. And no matter what strategy I do, whether it be hit and run, maybe I slug a tiny bit, it seems like the survivors usually just bounce back. It feels like I am powerless right now. And
I've said this many times as well, to add on to what Mr. Headache is saying here, is that the killer side feels weak, right? Because of that. You are the side with powers and abilities, and you're literally the villains from horror movies. And you feel like you have no power when you're using those insanely iconic characters. And that's been my main problem. And that's why I had that video, which I'll show you guys. I'll link it at the end. You guys can see it there, which was talking about the game should be killer-sided. Here's why, right? And that was mainly to talk about killers should feel stronger. And then, of course, you got the brain-dead takes that say, oh, you just want the game to be easy. It's like, that's not what it's about. Like, that's not at all what it's about. Because keep in mind that nobody's afraid of the killers. Like, the fact that you, as a killer player, can feel so powerless when you're literally the one with powers is crazy to hear. And that's what I've been talking about. Yeah, that's the main point I'm trying to get at here. And I'm glad that we have other people also kind of stating the same thing that I was trying to convey as well. And that's why I moved away from the game for a bit, because of that main reason. It's been a problem trying to get back into the game, especially when this is the case.
I think at first I was like, oh, okay, well, it's Springtrap, right? It's just clearly just like a lot of new people, or a lot of people are learning Springtrap. Springtrap has a fairly middling skill floor, not really an easy skill floor, and they have a high skill ceiling. So maybe it's just the new character blues, you know? But then, you know, as has been famously posted everywhere, the nightlight kill rates are in the dirt right now. Killers have dropped like 10 to 15% across the board consistently. And I know not.
What? Okay, I didn't know about that. Kill rates have dropped. Wow. I never thought I'd hear the day, right? Because we see a lot of those brain dead takes before, right? When they say, oh, but the kill rate's at this number, so therefore it's balanced. And it's like, but what about now, right? Like, now they're dropping. What are you gonna say now, right? Are we finally gonna face the music? What? The kill rates have dropped.
Fan reported, so you got to take that with a grain of salt, but usually it's a good impression of a general character's impact on the game. Obviously characters like Blight usually have higher kill rates, etc. So having everybody like dropping so starkly by like 10 or 15% is generally very, very worrying. So first off, the healing buffs that came through with the Springtrap chapter, I been like, you know, seeping into the game for a long time. My good friend Revium, who is mostly known for being a trickster main, but also enjoys Survivor a fair bit too, famously was kind of like forecasting that like healing was starting to get really, really strong. Things like Resurgence, making it to where you can heal right off.
This is exactly what I was talking about in a different video, and I've said this many times in different commentaries. Like, Resurgence being buffed was one of the worst changes we've ever had. The fact that, like, the perk Resurgence was completely fine at 50% healing progress. Why they changed it to 70 is insane. Now people run will make it 100% healing speed. It's instantaneous right under hook. So in that situation, what are you gonna do? Because the idea that they want you to trade out hooks is so that you create slowdown by them healing their teammate and then having to go back to the gen. If they're instantaneously healing under the hook, they don't even have to actually finish healing and go back to the gen. They could just instantaneously go back to the gen. So now you're forced into chasing that same person that got unhooked because they're already healed anyway. So that's the only way you can even try to keep up. You're in a situation where you literally can't do anything else. That's exactly what I've been talking about.
Old circle of healing, not current circle of healing, but old circle of healing, back where you can just run to a corner, heal yourself without any sort of trouble, and be right back into the game lickety split, and making the game kind of unnaturally efficient. We have seen this kind of meta essentially return to the game a la old circle of healing because Botany had its medkit efficiency nerf removed. The Desperate got buffed, but a lot of healing perks either got buffed or released around the same time, essentially making it to where you can pop off hook and be healed, and I'm not even exaggerating, 2 or 3 seconds. I was playing some Survivor games today, actually, where I was running Resurgence, Botany, and a medkit, and I got off hook and healed myself while the killer was actively coming back to hook immediately. I literally got
that's exactly my point. That's what I've been saying, that Resurgence was way overbuffed. That's why I was saying that overall it's just not good. Like, Resurgence, I already said it never needed a buff. I don't think it ever did. I think it was perfectly fine the way it was off start. It used to be 50% off of healing progress off of the hook. I thought that was perfectly fine. It saves time, but it wasn't too oppressive and unhealthy for the game. But now, with all these like a bunch of healing perks added on top of Resurgence, on top of Empathic Connection, on top of Botany Knowledge getting buffed, on top of every other perk, it makes it even harder to keep up now, because now they have even more time to do things when this was the main form of slowdown. And I'm glad that Mr. Headache here is talking about it and is able to bring that to light, that this is a big issue.
Off hook, healed for like 2.5 seconds, I'm good. That is absurd. If you're not running leverage, essentially heals off hook are basically instant now. And this is awful, because one of the few things killers can do to bring back games when they're extremely tough is take advantage of survivors needing to heal. That can be coming back to hook to force them to break up the heal, make them play injured. This could be using hit and run tactics on somebody like Wraith, but keeping survivors injured is a big part of how killers play the macro game, which is the hardest part of the game, where you have to control the map, control the whole team, that sort of thing. Now that's just basically not a thing, because healing perks are so good, you just heal in 2 seconds. And even if you don't have the healing perks, somebody on your team probably does. So you end up in this situation where, well, anti-heal's not really a part of the game anymore unless you're running quad anti-heal perks. And even then, it's extremely difficult. You're fighting an uphill battle and probably would be better with actual slowdown. So all that time saved that they're not spending, you know, healing and getting back into the game is just going right back onto the gens. Often, you know, hooks are, you know, centered fairly close to gens unless the killer intentionally takes them farther away. So they come off hook, they heal in 2 seconds, and they're just immediately back on that gen. So while gen speeds are not actually faster, they're not spending as much time doing the healing part of the game, so they're just immediately back on the gens. And I will say it.
Thank you, Mr. Headache, for bringing that point up. And that's what I had realized as I've been watching and hearing this point, because I always knew that the gen speeds were a problem, but I didn't really entirely understand what it could have been. Like when I would go against teams, it would be gen speed perks, but even without them, they had the same exact speed. So I just didn't understand. They have reduced time in the mending, where they have reduced time in healing. They have reduced time to unhooking, healing and under the hook and stuff like that. They also have will make it 100% healing speed, resurgence with 70% progress already, so you're instantly healing. Yeah, body knowledge that got buffed as well, so like it makes it impossible to really keep up at that point. And this is a massive problem, and this might be the answer as to why everybody's matches that have experienced, like, are really not really having a great time and experiencing all this stuff, may not really be having a good time because of this. This might be the reason why. And I think it's what's destroying the game.
To where they would kind of spawn, like maybe there'd be 2 of them somewhere and 2 somewhere else, or there would be 1 somewhere and then 3 somewhere else. Survivors used to kind of spawn randomly, but mostly they'd be separated. Sometimes you would get those funny moments where you would all 4 spawn together. Usually I would do a meme there where I'm like, oh, I gathered you all here today to talk about our Lord and Savior Nemesis or something, right? But now survivors consistently spawn together, which was supposed to be a good thing. Like even I was like, oh, well, that should help a lot. And my name is Brandon. I was wrong. Because what has happened instead is that because survivors spawn together, they just very, very quickly approach the 2 closest gens. They split up into pairs, go on the 2 closest gens, and get those 2 gens done basically immediately, because gens get done faster if there's 2 people on them. And this is worse because on the killer end, if you don't have lethal or a character that has a lot of base kit info, if you don't find the survivors because they're all in one spot in time, then those gens are going to get done even faster, even more uncontested.
Yeah, that completely makes sense. I think a good example I can offer, like with pre-spawn changes, you might be able to find 1 survivor away from them, and even if the gen gets done, you might have been able to down that person, that straggler, and hook them, and then that would at least apply some pressure to pull them away from those gens to have to save, which then could potentially split them and make it a smidge slower. A smidge. Alright? Now, because they all spawn together, now if you don't find anybody at all, you pretty much are not going to be able to do that, and therefore you can start the game at 3 gens instead of 5. Because you will spawn in, walk into a direction, and then you'll lose 2 gens. So that is the biggest problem with this right now.
Because you can't interrupt them if you don't know where they are. The way it used to be was that you used to be able to search a vague area. If you guys have watched the match reviews, you know I mean the upside down triangle situation. But if you search this area that out ahead of you where you spawn, you would probably find somebody, because survivors didn't all spawn in one spot. So even if you checked the wrong spot, usually at least 1 person was running into your field of view there. Now that's not the case, so you have to like really turn the map upside down to find where all the survivors spawn, and by the time you get there, if you're not a high mobility killer or somebody that has base kit info,
so those killers can be characters like Nemesis, Ghostface, Trapper, Freddy at least can teleport, so at least you have like a chance. Skull Merchant, Pyramid Head too, he can't teleport or anything. He doesn't have that. Demogorgon to some extent, because he needs to place down his spots before he's able to use his tunnels. Oh, so that doesn't work. I mean, and mind you, this once again affects the low tiers, which is what I've been talking about for ages. These changes, these things are affecting the low tiers. Like a character specifically like Ghostface is not going to be able to do much in this situation. He doesn't have mobility. And you would need to run some kind of info perk, which means you're also not going to have slowdown, which means that, you know, you're going to be able to lose gens even quicker, despite the fact even knowing that they're there. Kind of impossible.
Those gens are probably going to be done by the time you get over there or close to it. Most times I start a game, The first gen usually mostly goes either uncontested or fairly close to uncontested, and then there's another one that already has progress on it, meaning that you are on average starting the game down 1.5 gens at any given point.
So that is an experience that I've always had for a long time. Like, I would say, I can't exactly know how long, but I do know for quite a while that was my experience. And it would be on stream, same thing. It would just be like instant gens pretty much off the bat. And that was how it was for a while, right? The fact that now everybody across the board now, we're talking like every MMR level, every playstyle, every main, every character, like everybody's talking about this topic. Now it goes to show that like now there's a bigger problem, because to me this was just how it went, right? That's what I would just see all the time. Like, to me, it was still annoying regardless, but it was still something I would see a lot. And now with the spawn changes, and now with the release of Springtrap, for some reason it's like everybody's seeing it now, like, and it's crazy to me, because this isn't something that was normal for most MMRs and most players. Like, I think that most people that would even tune in would be like, whoa, that's really fast. I'm like, that seems abnormal. And I would have them in a row. Like, it would just be one back-to-back matches that would be the same thing. Like, it was just seemed like that was just where I was at in terms of the matchmaking, I guess, and the ranking, I guess. And that's how it was. Kind of revert some of these changes. I've been saying that. Now, mind you, they reverted the haste changes on some of the perks, where, like, instead of giving 10% haste, now they give 7% from Unbound, and then also batteries included got their stat haste reduced too, but the range increased. So I'm wondering why they're not reverting the healing perks. Like, that would probably fix this a little bit more, so that we can bring the healing speed down, because that's not what we want. We want the healing speed to be longer, the gens to be longer, so that there's more time across the board.
Which, you know, if you ever approached anybody and asked, hey, would you like DBD to start at 3.5 gens instead of 5? Of course, everybody on the street would say no. Absolutely not. That's essentially the situation we're in now, because the survivors essentially get a guaranteed early game. I made a video really long time ago on this channel talking about, like, the 2/3 rule. I think is what I called it. I called it the 2/3 rule. Whoever wins 2/3 of the game wins the match. So that being like early game, mid game, and then the end game. So like early game is like the first 2 gens, so 5 to 3 gens, and then the mid game is 3 gens to all gens done, and then the end game is obviously just the end game, anywhere between, you know, that and then the doors opening. Now the survivors essentially always is an exaggeration, right? I'm a little upset right now. let's teeter the emotions back a little bit. The survivors always have a good chance and are encouraged to always win the early game, just with the way spawn logic is now. They have a very, very good chance on average to almost always secure that early game. So if we're looking at like 2/3 or whoever,
it gives them a very massive advantage, and it depends, it's team by team, but given the fact that it's there, given the fact the advantage is there, is the biggest problem, because most teams that have played the game for more than 2 hours would understand that I do gen, game goes by faster, I escape. Like, pretty simple formula. And if all that slowdown and that downtime is reduced from healing and then saving and all this kinds of stuff, all that pretty much means that there's even more time to finish the gens. They get done even faster, and then nobody can really keep up, especially with lower tier killers and stuff like that, especially, or even characters that may not even be considered low tier but are stronger and just do not have map mobility. They're going to suffer even more, and that's the biggest problem.
wins 2/3 of the match sequences, or the match segments, wins the game. They essentially almost always have one in their corner already just off the bat, which is extremely painful, and it forces you as the killer to either play extremely efficient or extremely mean. In a lot of cases, those are the same thing, that being, you know, tunneling, slugging, etc. I have had to tunnel and slug more than I ever have in any of my matches, and I certainly don't feel good about it. Not because I have any like issues with camping or tunneling, but because I just frankly don't want to try that hard in all my games all the time. Like, it's just, I don't want to do that. Like,
Yeah, I completely agree. Yeah, especially as somebody like myself who spent a lot of time just wanting to win games, because that was more so what I would find at least engaging about DBD, is at least trying to improve at my characters and win my matches. And you know, going down that path of course leads to very stressful games, and is inevitable that that's going to occur. But now that even people that are casual or average or just want to have fun are now experiencing what people that would want to win all the time would probably experience. You know, obviously if they play legit and don't, you know.
It removes a lot of the gameplay of the game for the sake of efficiency, which is fine when necessary, but I'm finding that it's necessary in so many more games now that the game is starting to become kind of a drag. And then finally, I think this is...
Yeah, Mr. Headache completely covers the exact point that I was going to make myself, is the fact that, you know, and I've made this point many a times, you use these strategies in order to be more efficient. Requirement if you're trying to win your games. Now, the problem is that people that are just trying to have fun and play the game in this way are dealing with matches like these and then have to use those strategies. And they already don't want to, as he's even saying himself, and it's unfortunately a necessary evil. But in other words, it's required, and that already means that a lot of people are not going to want to have fun, right? Because a lot of people play casually, a lot of people play in the average, and they don't want or don't know how, or maybe just don't feel the need to want to play for efficiency's sake. They just want to enjoy the game for what it is. So that is the biggest problem that they're going to be facing, and that is what Mr. Headache is trying to put out, and that's my point that I'm making as well, and that's not good. Like, that's not something we want to see. That is not ideal, because you're going to be pushing away a lot of players that want to maybe just play killer for some fun, and then they're getting absolutely steamrolled by just the absolute insane amount of gen speed.
Realistically, the only reason we were winning those games, despite the fact that we were doing skillful things, is because people were at least going one extra hook stage in our game. Not even most of the team, but just at least one person usually was going first, second, giving up at some point, right? So I feel like all of our kill rate...
I would disagree to some extent. I think there's definitely plenty of matches that in the same way they didn't quit, and then they because I really think, at least from my perspective as somebody who would go for a lot of wins, if you get a very strong start and then they give up after that, then that's fine. That, you know, they pretty much kind of lost all hope from the beginning, and that was pretty much guaranteed to win otherwise. But when it comes to like an average match where they're still trying to play and you're still hooking everybody and stuff like that, I don't entirely believe that it would always be that they were giving up. At least from my perspective. All right. Because, like, you know, I would at least keep track of the HUD. You know, when I would play, I would always, you know, try to keep an eye on who has hook states and who's on second, so I could get them closer to getting out. I wouldn't say that it was always entirely the quitting, at least in my perspective, because usually when they quit, it's pretty obvious. I would say, you know, they'll stop running, they'll stand there, they'll you know, just not even. They won't continue playing, stuff like that. So I wouldn't say, like, you know, because you can see, like, on the HUD, you know, if you ever recorded your match and looked at it back or anything like that, or even just like just keeping an eye on who's hooked, and just looking at that kind of thing, and kind of keeping track of who's where. I think that you would notice it more, but maybe it's different for other people, but that's from my perspective at least.
And actually get out this time. And I think it just says something like kind of like ridiculously haunting about the game, that like, wow, the only thing holding everything in balance was people just having a penchant for giving up for zero reason. That was the thread that was holding all this together. That's what was making our matches actually make sense. And they're like, oh well, if I play skillfully, most times I win.
I wouldn't entirely agree with that, but I do like the idea that could be a solution, if that makes sense. Because I wouldn't like, because the thing is that there's still plenty of, like, at least from my experience playing the game, plenty of teams that were just they didn't care. You know what I'm saying? They did not care. They were going to power through and try to win as much as I was. And on the same side of the coin, there was also plenty of matches that I've had that were easy washes, right? Like from the very start. But the idea that quitting was the main thing that was keeping everything in balance, like, I would say that maybe it's a part of the problem, but I wouldn't say that that would have been the only thing that was keeping people, keeping the matches like in a sort of playable state, in my opinion. I think it would be more in combination with maybe another factor, like obviously, because I think it depends on the match itself as well. You know, once again, the case by case thing, because sometimes that, like, you'll be going against more unexperienced players, and then they will probably just leave their teammate on the hook. They'll try to pull so they can try to unhook themselves because no one else is gonna hook them, and then they end up just dying. I've seen that happen before. I think the other day when I had played a character I really don't play much. I think I was on Myers, I think it was, during the anniversary event, and I had noticed that, and they definitely were not. They didn't really seem like they had a lot of hours, just judging by the way that they were playing. So but then again, as we've also figured out in a different video, the vast majority of players are in the average and to low. So I guess I think maybe MrHeadache is right then. It's kind of hard to pinpoint it. You let me know in the comments what you think, if maybe this is like something you agree with or disagree with, but I feel like that seems, honestly, if we're taking into account what we know, I think that does seem fair. I think that might be like a fair assessment.
That was all it was. That was the thread holding things together, was people just not quitting. That's all it took for matches to become frustrating. Of course, that's an exaggeration. We just talked about 2 other reasons that matches became frustrating.
It's true. It's true. Yeah.
But like, that's all it took to make things suddenly a lot more terrifying, was people actually sticking around. That's depressing. And I feel like overall, just before we get to the survivor part, just in summary, I feel like any one of these changes alone, you know, we could adjust to, right? And it'd be all right. Healing being super buffed, not great, but I feel like people would find a way around that. The survivor spawn thing, frustrating. I feel like people would find a way around that. People staying in games and just generally being more efficient because they're not going next, we could find a way around that. But all 3 at once kind of creates this perfect storm of like, oh no, but this, oh no, but this, oh no, but this, and now everything has become very overwhelming in a very short period of time.
It's definitely very telling that the vast majority of players, from my understanding, right? Because like if this is like a common thing that MrHeadache is talking about, and I saw Mint Skull talk about a similar topic, which I'll also make a video about that as well, to see if the points kind of line up the same way or maybe they're different. And I've seen this across the board, like myself. I've seen other people talk about it as well. So I think that it's really telling that this is now a problem for everybody and altogether, which is insane. And yeah, I mean, what is the solution, you know? And it's do a bit of some reverting, you know, do a little bit of some reworking of these things. And I want to drop videos talking about different perks and how to actually fix them correctly, and not leave them the way they are now, which is absolutely insane with how powerful they are now. So that's sort of my take on it. I'll have to make separate videos for it just to keep everything more organized, because I don't need to try to drop too much yapping on you guys watching. But with that being said, thank you guys for watching. We have the link for the original video in the description to watch the full MrHeadache video where he covers the rest of the other side of things. So with that being said, thank you guys once again for watching. While you're down there, you can support the channel with the links there. You can follow on Twitch to watch me play Killer live, and I will see you guys in the next video.